For last 2.5 days, you heard a lot about AI, generative AI, agentic, multi-agent. My task for next 15 minutes is to put everything together and give you a very concrete example how we can use all those things in the context of single layer network, IP, or optical, or multi-layer IP over DWDM. To this end, let's assume that you are a network operator. For the next 15 minutes, your persona is you are a network operator, a seasoned network operator. You are given a task, something related to network assurance or optimization, and they ask you to solve that problem. The whole idea of agentic, multi-agent, GenAI based is to mimic whatever you think when I given you a task. So for the next 15 minutes, 14 minutes actually, we will go through that and we'll tell you how we are virtualizing whatever you're thinking. My name is Reza Rokui. I'm Senior Director, SDN Architect, Ciena. And to address this question, for the first few slides, I will go relatively high. I give you a context, and we narrow it down to the solution that I provided. Why AI and ML all of a sudden becomes that important? For last 10, 15 years, we have AI, ML for the networking. I put a few reasons here. There might be more. One of them is because of proliferation of the LLM and the GPT. Basically, ChatGPT, Llama, giving you a context that why we cannot use exactly the same thing with the networking. The second reason, which is very important, is now operators are willing to listen, to have a collaboration with vendors to come up with the scenario and use cases. If I went to an operator 5 years ago, it was very hard for me to convince them that we have a use case and let's work together. But right now is exactly the other way around. They come and say, okay, what is your solution for AI? Generative AI, AI ops, lots of acronym, but we will get to that one. What is the real meaning of that? And last but not least, because everything is getting cheaper. Software and hardware is getting cheaper. So this is just giving you a context. I'm sure you know that, but when we talk about AI and generative AI, sometimes when we talk about AI, it doesn't really mean that much because AI is very abstract, generic, at the very top of the chain. But when we go through the chain from the creating a model that I train becomes ML. If the model is deep neural network, become the deep learning, and going through that generative AI is a text-based text or image that I create, and LLM is the underneath. So this one is just giving you a visual image. When we talk about LLM and generative AI, the most important aspect of this picture is take a look at ML and generative AI. These are the two important aspects. So just narrow it down to what we want to achieve. When we talk about AI for a network, there are three aspects. One is network for AI. I have a network. I want to design the network. Lots of discussion how to design data center and all those things. How to consider the AI traffic that we have. So this is the first one, network for AI. AI for network. Now I have a network. How it's designed, I don't know. But I have a network. I want to use the AI capability to do assurance, proactive monitoring of the system, predictive analysis, predictive AI, optimization, planning, and all those things. And last but not least, AI for engineering, enterprise, internal to an enterprise. I want to go and use the various type of copilot and some generative AI-based solution that simplify my operation. So when we talk about AI ops is the middle one. AI for operations, very simple and logical. So the concept of AI ops at Ciena, we designed We look at it holistically, and we have 3 types of category of use cases. These are the area that AI ops, the way that we just mentioned, is going to help. But with that very short summary, now let's go to the previous example I gave you. You are, for the next 10 minutes, are network engineer. So how we are basically address the question that I asked you. Let's say I want to do the automation. Traditionally, how we are doing it. Just want to make sure that order is okay. Yes. So traditionally, let's say you want to do optimization. You want to do the optimization of the SR policy. What do? You go and create a bunch of workflows and say, if latency of that SR policy is below something, I have to do A, B, C, D. You go and write it. If I want to do the, for example, proactive assurance, I'm going to monitor the QoS of this interface. If it is below something, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, F. So, and you go and write all these workflows statically. Something happened, event happened, you go and execute that. So the whole idea here is that you write the workflow, you collect the data. After that, that workflow is basically your SLA or intent. If it is violated, you go and execute it. This kind of logic is not scalable, because how many of this workflow you want to write? How you are going to maintain it? You change your network, it's going to change the logic that you have in your workflow. So the whole idea is, let's take that one. This is the example that I gave you. You are the network engineer. For the next 2 minutes, forget about AI. I am network engineer. I'm giving a task. Optimize my IP network, optical network, or IP over DWDM, or do the assurance, do the automation. Any use case that you can imagine, let's say you are doing it. As a network engineer, what do? Do you have any specific workflow in your mind that if somebody asks me to solve this assurance, I have to go first to the route. I tell them to the node, I do this. After that, I do OEM. After that, you don't have that concept. You know by nature that you have to start from somewhere, and you do logic. You reason something and you act. And this is one of the keywords that I want you to remember, react. React is that concept that as a human, we are intuitively in doing it. I go, for example, let's assume the question is assurance. I go and let's say I tell them to the node the information that I want to get. I don't have it in my pocket. I know how to get it. I know that some of the information is inside router. Some of the task I want to do OEM is inside router. I can go to the northbound interface of the SDN controller, grab some information. If there is a virtualization, I can go to Kubernetes, get something. So as a seasoned network engineer, you go through a cycle of reasoning and acting. Short, react. Meaning you go and do something, you get the result back. Depends on the result that you are getting. You tell it to a node, you see the routing table. Do I have the route? Yes. So based on information that you had before and this, you go to the second round. Now let me do the OEM. Tell it to the node. So you go through this cycle, and eventually you come up with action or actions, answer or answers. Depends on the situation. And the whole idea of generative AI and everything we want to do, I want to make that engineer virtualize. Everything that we just mentioned, I want to have that one virtualized. And the idea of the virtual network engineer in this context is, yes, we can use the generative AI to do that one. And for the next couple of slides, we go through that and say why we can do that. So this is an example that I mentioned. You go, the example is there is L3 VPN between 2 routers. That I have a packet drop between router R1 and R2 on port 111.222, and By the way, one of the routers is virtualized. What do you do? As a network engineer, you go and take this one and say, okay, there is a packet loss. Let me just do the OAM. You go, run the OAM, get the result back. Is this okay? Yes, no. If the answer is either of those, in your mind, dynamically, and the second keyword that I want you to remember is dynamically, dynamicity. You dynamically adjust your thought process to the next level. Next level is, delay is okay. The problem is not that. I go and look at the configuration. Did somebody did some configuration changes? I go and audit. And the whole logic here is you go through that process. How many times you go? I don't know, depends on the situation. The whole idea is this workflow that I just mentioned is dynamic versus the static workflow that I mentioned before. So in this case, you go through that process, and at the end, you come up with the result, and depends on what you want to do. The result might vary, depends on your task is optimization, automation, or assurance. So the whole idea here is that virtual network engineer can be done using generative AI. And the answer, the question might be why. I put 10 of them here. The first 3 are very important. The first one is very simple. The second and third one is less understood and less talked about the generative AI and LLM. The first one is very simple, ChatGPT. Everybody knows that it can process the natural language. But second one and third one is it can do react, it can do reasoning and acting. They are very smart to do that one. If you can program it in such a way that you give the correct persona, it can do it. And the third one is we can create an action with the various independent entity, aka agents, that they can work together to achieve the way that you want to do it. So to just give you the short summary of agent, it doesn't matter the detail of this picture. The important aspect here is an agent. Think of that as an entity, a logical entity that can react as an individual for a specific task. It has memory and other things to allow to do it, but the detail of that is not very important, and it's built on top of LLM, because the brain of everything is that LLM functionality that we are going to exploit to do that. So this is one realization of whatever I just mentioned. The request come to the so-called orchestration agent. That request could be natural language, somebody typing a question, or could be an API. It goes to the orchestration. That orchestration agent is like you, that you go and say, let me just do the telnet to the node. You basically don't go and grab the router and bring it and do it. You go somewhere and do it. And this agent, think of one of them is agent which is doing routing table. One of the agent is doing OAM. One agent is doing Kubernetes monitoring and so forth. So we go through that process, and through that process, we come up with the answer. The whole idea of this one is human in the loop as well. In other words, we are at any time we can go and stop the process. So stop, you told me this is the problem, elaborate, give me more. And that process is basically the beauty of this approach. So using dynamicity, dynamic workflow, this is something I want you to remember. React, reasoning and acting, I want you to remember that one as well. And this is, if you put it in a very practical aspect, this is exactly the same picture. Now I can access the database for the RAG. Depends on how you design. This is one typical realization of whatever I mentioned. It's up to you how you want to do it. You're having 100% autonomy to design the network, to design these agents, this logical entity, and putting everything together. This is one of the practical aspects that I did it in half a day using the ChatGPT framework, GPT 4.0, with LangChain and the prompt engineering. I was able to do that one. Granted, it's not very sophisticated and scalable, but it is possible to do. Something that we need, maybe 5 years ago, we needed 1 year with 20 developer to do it, now we can do it in half a day. This agent that I put here, this is my choice of the agent I want to do. You can combine them, you can do whatever you want to do. But the whole idea here is this ecosystem that we put here is called multi-agent, self-explanatory, there are multiple of them, creates dynamic workflow. And this is one of the things I want you to remember from my session. If you don't remember anything, dynamic workflow is the key. And this is the important aspect. You can generalize in concept for assurance, optimization, automation, for single layer, multi-layer. There are lots of detail that we have to consider, but the framework is there. And my second last slide, there are frameworks that allow you to do that one. I put a few of them here, Microsoft, for example, AutoGen, Crew AI, and LangChain, LangGraph, and so forth. Every week, you see many of them is coming. For our industry, time used to be linear, but right now, time is logarithmic. Every week or 2 weeks, you will see something else coming. I'm not sure you heard was Manus, for example, is agentic, the framework that allows you to do lots of them without even writing a code. So if we put everything together, we have started very high level, we narrow it down, we say the whole idea of this one, I skipped that, the very last one is the message that I want to give. Generative AI, LLM, are smart enough to give us the ability to create dynamic workflow, and agentic, you can call it differently, are a key enabler to allow you to do that one. And with that one, I have one homework for you. If you come up with any use cases in that context, we are interested to hear that. You can give it, after this one, you can drop by and we can have discussion, or you can provide this one to us. And we have a booth here as well at Ciena. If you are interested to see some of them in action, Marie will give you a good demo on that. And with that one, I'm going to conclude my session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.